There are moments in life that feel ordinary, moments that pass so quietly, so subtly, that you don't even stop to question them. A small decision, a simple gesture, a fleeting interaction that seemed almost forgettable. But what if I told you one of those moments was not ordinary at all? What if I told you that on July 15th, something shifted in the unseen realm because of you? Not because you were trying to be extraordinary, not because you were seeking recognition, but because in a single, quiet moment you did something that heaven could not ignore. And now, right now, you are being pulled back into that moment. Not by chance, not by coincidence, but by divine design. Archangel Michael is stepping forward, and his voice does not come softly. It carries authority, it carries urgency, and it carries a truth that is about to shake the way you see your own life. He says, "You thought it was nothing, but heaven saw everything." Pause for a second. Think back. Have you ever helped someone without thinking twice? Said something kind when you didn't have to? Chose patience when frustration would have been easier? Walked away from conflict when you could have reacted? Maybe you don't even remember the exact moment. Maybe it felt too small to matter, too insignificant to hold weight. But heaven does not measure moments the way humans do. Heaven measures intent. Heaven measures heart. Heaven measures the unseen ripple of a single act of compassion. And on July 15th, something about your heart aligned perfectly with divine timing. That's why this message found you. Because there is no randomness in divine communication. There is no accidental encounter when heaven is involved. If your eyes are on these words right now, it means something in your spirit was ready to receive what is about to be revealed. Archangel Michael did not come to everyone with this message. He came to you because you were there in that moment, because you were the one who made that choice, because without even realizing it you stepped into a role that was far bigger than the situation in front of you. And here is where it gets deeper. There was more happening in that moment than what your eyes could see. The air around you carried more than just sound and movement. It carried spiritual presence. A test was unfolding. A quiet, hidden test. Not announced. Not explained. Just presented and passed. You didn't feel the weight of it then. But heaven did. And now, something inside you is starting to stir, isn't it? A quiet curiosity. A subtle pull. A question rising in your spirit. What did I do? That question is not random either. Because the truth is, this message is not just about what happened. It's about what it meant. It's about why that moment was seen, recorded, and responded to instantly in the spiritual realm. It's about why Archangel Michael himself has stepped forward to acknowledge it. And most importantly, it's about what has already been set in motion because of you. Stay with this. Don't brush it off. Because what you're about to discover next will reveal that what you thought was a simple act may have been a divine assignment all along. Type "I was chosen" in the comments if you feel this message stirring your spirit. Blessing code 1717 is now activating around your life. There is something you need to understand, and it may challenge the way you see your own life. The moment that heaven is speaking about, the one that took place on July 15th, did not look extraordinary on the surface. It did not come with thunder. It did not arrive with a sign or a voice from the sky. It came quietly. So quietly that you almost overlooked it. And that is exactly why it mattered. Because the most sacred moments are rarely the loud ones. They are the ones that slip through unnoticed, disguised as ordinary choices, hidden inside everyday life. Archangel Michael says, the act that moved heaven was not performed for attention. It was performed from the heart. Think carefully. Where were you on that day? What were you doing? Who crossed your path? There was a moment, brief, almost forgettable, where you had a choice. A simple decision stood in front of you. You could have ignored it. You could have walked away. You could have chosen yourself, your comfort, your routine. But you didn't. You responded. Maybe it was a kind word you spoke when someone needed it most. Maybe it was a moment where you chose patience instead of irritation. Maybe it was help you offered without expecting anything in return. Maybe it was something even smaller, something so subtle you didn't even register it as important. But here is the truth that changes everything. That moment was not small. It was seen. It was weighed. It was recorded. And it carried a significance far beyond what your natural mind could comprehend. Because while you were living that moment on the surface, something else was happening beneath it. The spiritual realm was watching. Not in judgment, not in pressure, but in observation, in expectation, an awareness of what that moment represented. Archangel Michael reveals that what you experienced as a simple interaction was, in reality, a crossroads of intention, a point where your spirit had the opportunity to align with something higher or to pass it by. And without hesitation, without calculation, you aligned. That is what caught heaven's attention. Not perfection, not performance, but alignment. You didn't overthink it. You didn't question it. You didn't pause to analyze whether it would benefit you. You simply acted from a place that was pure, unguarded, and real. And in that instant something shifted. Because heaven responds to authenticity in a way that the world cannot. There are people who perform goodness for recognition. There are people who act with hidden motives. There are people who calculate their kindness based on what they might receive in return. But you in that moment expected nothing. And that is why it was sacred. What you must understand now is this. The value of that act was not in its size, it was in its source. It came from your heart. And your heart, in that moment, reflected something divine. That is why it mattered. That is why it was noticed immediately. That is why Archangel Michael is speaking about it now. Because heaven does not overlook what is genuine. Even when you do. You see, there are moments in your life where your spirit is being tested, not through difficulty, not through pressure, but through opportunity. Opportunity to respond. Opportunity to reveal who you are when no one is watching. July 15th was one of those moments. And you passed it. Not with effort, not with struggle, but with natural alignment to something greater than yourself. And here is where the mystery deepens. Because what you thought was a simple act of kindness was not just kindness. It was intervention. You were placed in that moment for a reason you did not fully understand. The timing, the situation, the presence of that other person, it was all aligned in a way that was not random. You were there because you were meant to be. And what you did carried weight. Weight that reached beyond the physical interaction and into the spiritual realm. That is why this moment is being brought back to you now. Because you did not just participate in something ordinary. You stepped into something sacred. And you did it without even knowing. Let that settle in your spirit. Because what comes next will reveal who was truly on the other side of that moment and why your action mattered more than you could have ever imagined. Type "I walk in purpose" in the comments if you feel this truth resonating within you. Blessing Code 2020 is now surrounding your path. There is something happening right now that you cannot see with your physical eyes, but it is real. It is active, and it is directly connected to you. Archangel Michael speaks again, and this time his voice carries a deeper weight. a sacred intensity that cannot be ignored. He reveals something that most people never fully understand while walking this earth. Nothing done from a pure heart ever goes unnoticed in heaven. Nothing. Not a word. Not a gesture. Not a decision made in silence. And especially not what you did on July 15th. Because in that moment, while you were simply living your life, responding naturally, thinking it was just another interaction, heaven was watching with precision. Not casually, not passively, but attentively. You must understand this clearly. The spiritual realm is not distant. It is not disconnected from your daily life. It is present. It is aware. It is responsive to the movements of your heart. And on that day, your heart moved in a way that created a ripple far beyond what you could see. Archangel Michael reveals that there are witnesses in heaven assigned to observe moments like these. Not to judge you, not to condemn you, but to record the alignment of your spirit with divine truth. These witnesses do not miss details. They do not overlook intention. They do not forget what is done in sincerity. And when you acted on July 15th, they took notice immediately. There was no delay. There was no hesitation. The moment your action was completed, it was already being acknowledged in the spiritual realm. Think about that. While you moved on with your day, perhaps not even thinking about what you had just done, heaven had already responded. That is how powerful a genuine act can be. It does not need to be repeated. It does not need to be announced. It simply needs to be real. Michael describes it as a moment where your action was sealed, not in secrecy but in recognition, as if a mark was placed upon that moment, distinguishing it from the countless other actions that pass through time unnoticed. Why? Because your action carried something rare. It carried purity. And purity creates immediate resonance in the spiritual realm. There are many actions performed every day, but not all of them reach heaven in the same way. Some are clouded by expectation. Some are driven by obligation. Some are shaped by fear or pressure. But yours was different. Yours rose. It moved upward, not just as an action, but as an expression of who you are becoming. And heaven responded to that expression. This is why Archangel Michael is speaking to you now. Because what was recorded was not just what you did, but who you revealed yourself to be in that moment. You revealed compassion when it would have been easier to remain indifferent. You revealed awareness when it would have been easier to stay distracted. You revealed alignment when it would have been easier to follow routine. And that revelation mattered more than you realize. Because when heaven records a moment like that, it does not simply store it, it responds to it. Immediately. Michael reveals that your action triggered a response that moved through different layers of the spiritual realm. Not in chaos, not in confusion, but in order, in purpose, in recognition of alignment. Something was acknowledged. Something was activated, and something was assigned. You may not have felt it then, but something shifted around you. Subtle but real. Quiet but powerful. A covering, a recognition, a marking of your spirit that distinguished you in that moment. And here is the part that may surprise you. This was not a test you knew you were taking. There was no warning. No announcement. No indication that what you were doing carried any significance at all. And yet you responded correctly. That is what made it real. Because you were not performing. You were not trying to impress. You were simply being who you are at your core. And heaven saw that. Now, as you hear this, something inside you may be awakening. The realization that perhaps there is more happening in your life than you have allowed yourself to believe. A recognition that your actions, even the smallest ones, are not as insignificant as they may seem. And that realization is important, because what you are beginning to understand now is that your life is not being lived in isolation. It is being witnessed, not in a way that brings pressure, but in a way that brings purpose. And on July 15th, your purpose revealed itself, even if only for a moment. That moment was enough. Enough to be recorded. Enough to be acknowledged. Enough to be remembered in heaven. And now, enough to be revealed back to you. Stay with this. Let it settle in your spirit. Because what comes next will uncover the truth about who was truly involved in that moment and why heaven responded so quickly. Type "Heaven sees me" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 3030 is now activated around your life. As this revelation settles into your spirit, understand this. Every act of light you release into the world becomes a seed planted in heaven's soil, waiting to multiply in lives you may never see. This message you are hearing is not just for you. It is a flame meant to reach others who are still walking in darkness, searching for confirmation that God sees them too. Scripture declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." And today, that promise is alive and speaking directly to you. I feel this deeply. I am being called to help this message reach someone who is losing hope right now. When you sow into this mission through Super Thanks with a PayPal link in the description, you are not giving to a channel. You are opening a doorway for heaven's voice to reach another soul in need. This is not a casual action. This is a prophetic step of obedience that aligns you with divine flow and multiplies spiritual impact. As you give, may your life be filled with overflowing provision, clarity, and divine favor that cannot be contained. Step into this moment and release your seed now. There is a truth that is about to unfold, and it may challenge everything you thought you understood about that moment on July 15th. Because what you experienced was not just an interaction between you and another person. It was something far deeper, far more intentional, and far more spiritual than you could have ever imagined. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and this time his presence carries a profound stillness, as if what he is about to reveal must be received with full awareness. He speaks with clarity, without hesitation, and his words cut through every assumption you may have held about that moment. He says, "The one you helped was not placed before you by accident. There was more within them than your eyes could recognize." Pause here, because this is where everything begins to shift. You saw a person. You saw a situation. You saw something that required a response. But what you did not see was the spiritual identity hidden beneath the surface. Because not every encounter in your life is purely human. Some are divine intersections. Some are orchestrated moments where heaven allows something greater to pass through your reality quietly, subtly, without announcement. And on that day, you were standing in the middle of one of those moments. Archangel Michael reveals that the presence you encountered carried an angelic connection. Not in the way the world imagines, not in glowing forms or overwhelming signs, but in essence, in assignment, in spiritual significance. There are times when angelic activity moves through human circumstances. Moments where what appears ordinary is actually layered with divine purpose. And unless you are looking with spiritual eyes, you will never recognize it in the moment. That is why your response mattered so much. Because you were not responding to appearance. You were responding to essence. You were not reacting to what was visible. You were aligning with something invisible. And that alignment is what heaven recognized instantly. Michael explains that what stood before you was part of a greater assignment. Something that required human interaction, human compassion, human willingness to respond. Not because the angelic realm lacks power, but because there are moments when divine purpose must move through human hands. And in that moment you became the vessel, not by force, not by instruction, but by choice. Your choice. You chose to engage. You chose to respond. You chose to act. And in doing so, you fulfilled something that had already been set in motion beyond your awareness. This is why the moment felt ordinary. Because if you had known the weight of it, if you had seen the full reality of what was happening, you might have hesitated. You might have questioned. You might have stepped back. But heaven needed your response to be pure, unfiltered, uninfluenced by pressure or expectation. And that is exactly what you gave. Michael reveals something even deeper now. He says that in that moment, you were not only helping, you were protecting. What you did created a shift, a subtle but powerful interruption to something that could have unfolded differently if you had chosen not to act. You were placed there to ensure that the outcome aligned with divine order. And without even realizing it, you did. This is why heaven responded so quickly. This is why your action was recorded immediately. Because it was not just an act of kindness. It was participation in something sacred. You see, there are moments when the line between the physical and the spiritual becomes thin. Moments where the two realms touch in ways that are not obvious but are deeply real. July 15th was one of those moments. And you were at the center of it. The person you encountered may never fully understand what took place. They may never realize the role you played. To them, it may remain just another interaction. But to heaven it was something entirely different. It was a moment where divine purpose moved through you. A moment where your presence made a difference beyond what your natural mind could calculate. And now, as you hear this, something inside you may begin to shift. A realization, a quiet awareness that your life is more connected to the unseen than you have allowed yourself to believe. That your actions carry more weight than you have given them credit for. That your presence in certain moments is not random, it is intentional. This is what Archangel Michael wants you to understand. You are not moving through life accidentally. You are being positioned, guided, placed in moments that matter even when they appear small. And on July 15th, you were exactly where you needed to be. At exactly the right time. And do exactly what was required. Not because you knew, but because you were aligned. Let that truth settle within you. Because what comes next will reveal why this moment was allowed to happen in the first place and what it has now activated in your life. Type "I trust my divine path" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 4141 is now surrounding your journey. There are moments when heaven observes and there are moments when heaven responds. But then, there are rare moments, sacred moments, when heaven acknowledges. This is one of those moments. Archangel Michael does not step forward lightly. He does not speak without purpose. Every word he releases carries weight, authority, and divine intention. And right now, he is not simply observing your life, he is addressing you directly. He says, "I have seen what you did. I have witnessed the alignment of your spirit. And I stand to confirm, it was not overlooked." Let that settle within you. Because this is not symbolic language. This is not poetic expression. This is a declaration of recognition from a realm that does not operate on human standards, human validation, or human applause. Michael, the warrior of heaven, does not acknowledge actions that are empty. He does not respond to performance. He responds to truth, to alignment, to moments where the spirit of a person reflects the essence of divine intention. And on July 15th, that is exactly what happened through you. You were not trying to be seen, but you were seen. You were not trying to be recognized, but you were recognized. And now Michael reveals why. He explains that the moment you stepped into that interaction, you entered a space that was already charged with spiritual significance. It was not neutral. It was not casual. It was a moment that had already been marked in the unseen realm as a point of decision, not just for the one you encounter, but for you. Because every divine intersection carries two sides, one that receives and one that responds, and your role was to respond. Michael makes it clear that your response did more than fulfill a moment. It strengthened a spiritual position. It reinforced alignment. It confirmed something about you that heaven had already seen, but now had reason to acknowledge openly. He says, you acted without hesitation. You moved without resistance. You chose without fear. These are not small things, because hesitation can break alignment. Resistance can delay purpose. Fear can block movement. But in that moment you allowed none of those things to interfere. You moved in clarity, even if you did not understand it. You acted in confidence, even if you did not recognize it. You aligned in truth, even if you could not explain it. And that is why this acknowledgement is being given. Michael reveals something deeper now, something that shifts this from a simple recognition into something far more powerful. He says that your action did not only affect that moment, it registered you in the spiritual realm, not as someone who performed a single good act, but as someone whose spirit is capable of alignment when it matters most. This is what heaven looks for, not perfection, not consistency in human terms, but moments of true alignment that reveal the core of who you are. And in that moment you revealed yourself. You revealed that when placed in a position of choice, your spirit moves toward light. That when given an opportunity to act, you do not withdraw. That when something requires response, you do not ignore it. And that revelation matters more than you understand right now. Because Michael is not only acknowledging what you did, he is acknowledging who you are becoming. And that acknowledgement carries consequence. Not negative consequence, but activation. Because once heaven recognizes alignment, it does not remain passive. It responds. It adjusts. It begins to position things differently around you. Michael explains that this is why you may begin to feel a shift. Subtle at first, almost unnoticeable, but real. Because recognition in the spiritual realm creates movement. It opens pathways. It strengthens protection. It increases awareness. Not all at once, but in layers, in unfolding stages. You may not have connected it yet, but something around you has already begun to adjust. Because your action created a response that did not end in that moment. It continues. Even now, Michael stands not only as a witness, but as a protector of what has been activated. He says, what was aligned will be guarded. What was revealed will be strengthened. What was acknowledged will not be forgotten. This is not temporary. This is not fleeting. This is a marking, a recognition that places you in a position of increased awareness, whether you fully understand it yet or not. And here is what you must hold on to. You did not earn this through effort. You did not force this into existence. You did not strive for it. You aligned with it, naturally. And that is why it carries power. Now, as you listen to this, something inside you may begin to awaken. A deeper awareness of your own presence. A recognition that your life is not as ordinary as it may have seemed. That your actions, your choices, your responses, They matter in ways that go beyond what you can see. And this is only the beginning, because what comes next will reveal how this acknowledgement has already begun to shape what is unfolding ahead of you and what it is preparing you to step into. Type "I am aligned" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 5151 is now activated over your path. There is something you must begin to understand now, something that will shift the way you see cause and effect in your own life. Because what happened on July 15th did not end in that moment. It began there. Archangel Michael steps forward once more, and his presence carries a deeper gravity now, as if he is revealing something that has already moved beyond the point of reversal. He speaks with clarity, and his words carry a truth that reaches far beyond what you originally experienced. He says, "What you released in that moment did not stay where it was given. It moved." Let that sink in. Because most people believe that their actions are contained, that what they do begins and ends within the moment it happens, that a kind gesture remains a kind gesture and nothing more. But that is not how the spiritual realm operates. Nothing genuine remains still and moves. It expands. It creates impact far beyond its original point of origin. And what you did on July 15th created a ripple. Not a visible one. Not something that could be tracked or measured in the natural world. But a ripple in the unseen. A movement that traveled beyond that interaction. Beyond that space. Beyond that moment in time. Michael reveals that the instant your action aligned with truth, it created a response that began to extend outward. Like a stone dropped into still water, the effect did not stop at the point of contact. It began to spread. Widely. Powerfully. Intentionally. This is why heaven responded immediately. Because alignment does not just get noticed, it gets activated. Your action became a point of origin for something greater. It initiated movement in areas you could not see, in ways you could not anticipate. Michael explains that there are layers to this ripple. The first layer was immediate, a shift in the moment itself, a adjustment in the outcome of what was unfolding in front of you. You may not have seen it, but something was redirected. Something was preserved. Something was aligned differently because of your presence and your response. The second layer extended beyond that moment. It moved into the spiritual environment connected to that interaction. Where there may have been imbalance, there was now correction. Where there may have been disruption, there was now stabilization. And where something could have gone in a different direction, it was guided back into alignment. And then there is the third layer, the one that affects you directly. Because every genuine action releases something not only outward but also inward. It returns. Not in the same form. Not immediately. But inevitably. Michael reveals that what you released in that moment has already begun to return to you in subtle ways. You may not have recognized it yet, but there has been a shift. A quiet adjustment in your path, an unseen protection, an unexpected ease in something that could have been more difficult. These are not coincidences. These are echoes. Echoes of alignment. Echoes of what you set in motion. Because nothing done in truth disappears. It circulates. It moves through the unseen and returns at the appointed time. This is why Michael emphasizes that your action was not isolated. It was connected. Connected to something larger. Connected to something ongoing. Connected to something that continues even now. He says, the ripple has not stopped. It is still moving. And that means something for you. It means that what was set in motion is still unfolding. Still reaching. Still influencing, even in areas you are not yet aware of. There are moments ahead of you that will be touched by what you did. Situations that will feel slightly different. Outcomes that will shift in your favor without clear explanation. Doors that will open with less resistance than expected. These are not random occurrences. They are part of the ripple. Part of the movement that began when you aligned without hesitation. And here is where your awareness becomes important. Because once you understand that your actions carry this kind of weight, you begin to move differently. Not out of pressure, not out of fear, but out of clarity. A clarity that recognizes that even the smallest decision has the potential to create something far greater than it appears. Michael is not telling you this to overwhelm you. He's revealing this to awaken you, to bring you into awareness of the impact you already carry. You are not insignificant in your actions. You are not unnoticed in your choices. You are not disconnected from what unfolds around you. You are participating in it. Constantly. And on July 15th you participated in something that is still in motion. Something that has already begun to shape what is ahead. Now, as you sit with this, you may begin to sense it. A quiet realization that your life is not random, that your presence matters, that what you do, even when it feels small, can create movement far beyond what you see. Hold on to that awareness, because what comes next will reveal why you were the one placed in that moment and what it says about your role moving forward. Type "I create impact" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 6161 is now flowing through your path. There is a reason you were there. Not just physically present, not just available, but chosen. And this is where the understanding begins to deepen, because what happened on July 15th was not just an opportunity, it was a test. A quiet, unannounced, spiritually significant test that did not come with instructions or warnings. Archangel Michael speaks with unmistakable authority now, and his words carry a clarity that removes all doubt. He says, "You were not there by coincidence. You were there because your spirit was ready to be revealed." Let that truth settle within you. Because tests in the spiritual realm do not look like what you expect. They do not come labeled. They do not arrive with pressure or fear. They come disguised as normal moments, ordinary decisions, simple interactions that seem to carry no weight at all. And yet they carry everything. You were not told you were being tested. You were not aware that your response would be observed. You were simply presented with a moment, and in that moment you revealed who you are. That is what made it real. Because true alignment cannot be performed. It cannot be forced. It cannot be manufactured under pressure. It must come naturally, from the core of who you are when no one is watching and nothing is expected. And that is exactly what happened. Michael explains that this test was not about what you would do. It was about how you would respond without knowing it mattered. It was about whether your spirit would move toward light instinctively, without needing validation, without needing instruction. And you did, without hesitation, without calculation, without resistance. That is why you were chosen for that moment. Not because you are perfect, not because you always get everything right, but because in that specific moment, your spirit was aligned enough to respond correctly without being told to do so. That is rare, more rare than you realize, because many people encounter moments like that and do not respond, not out of bad intention, but out of distraction, hesitation, or self-focus. They miss the moment because they are not fully present within themselves. But you were present. You saw what needed to be seen. You felt what needed to be felt. And you acted. Michael reveals something deeper now. He says that moments like this are not random. They are placed, positioned in time to reveal who is ready for greater alignment and who is not. They are not designed to trap you or to cause failure, but to bring clarity. Clarity about your spirit. Clarity about your readiness. Clarity about your direction. And on that day you gave heaven clarity. You showed that when the moment arrives, you do not withdraw. You do not ignore. You do not turn away. You step in. And that matters. Because the test was not only about that moment, it was about what comes next. Michael makes it clear that passing this test was not the end of something. It was the beginning of a shift in how you are seen in the spiritual realm. Not as someone who simply moves through life, but as someone who can be trusted in moments that matter. And trust, in the spiritual sense, carries weight. It opens doors. It creates access. It allows for greater positioning in situations that require alignment. This does not mean your life will suddenly become overwhelming or filled with pressure. That is not how this works. It means that you will begin to find yourself in moments that matter more. Moments that carry weight, even if they appear simple. Moments where your presence has purpose even if it is not immediately obvious. And the reason for that is because you have already demonstrated something important. You have shown that you will respond, that you will act, that you will align, even when you do not fully understand what is happening. Michael emphasizes that this is what sets you apart in that moment. Not your knowledge, not your awareness, but your willingness to act from a place of truth without needing confirmation. And that is what heaven looks for. Because when someone can move in alignment without needing explanation, they can be placed in situations where explanation is not available. They can be trusted with moments that require instinct, clarity, and immediate response. That is what you demonstrated. And that is why you were chosen. Now, as you hear this, something inside you may begin to shift. A realization that perhaps you are more aligned than you have given yourself credit for. That perhaps your instincts, your responses, your quiet decisions carry more significance than you have recognized. And that realization is important. Because what comes next will require you to hold on to that awareness. To trust it. To recognize that when moments present themselves, they are not random. They are opportunities. Just as July 15th was. You passed that moment. And now, something new is unfolding. Something that builds on what you revealed. Something that will place you in alignment again. And when it does, you will recognize it. Because now you are aware. Type "I am ready" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 7171 is now activated around your calling. There is something you were never meant to see, but you are ready to understand now. Because every moment of alignment carries two reactions. One from heaven, and one from what opposes it. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and this time his presence is not only firm, it is protective. There is a shift in tone, a sharpening in his voice, as he begins to reveal something that has been operating quietly beneath the surface. He says, what you did not only create alignment, it disrupted something that was already in motion. Let that settle. Because what happened on July 15th was not just a positive moment. It was an interruption. An interruption to something that was not aligned with your path. Something that had been forming, quietly, subtly, without your awareness. You see, not everything unfolding around you is neutral. There are movements, influences, and intentions that exist beneath the surface of everyday life. Not always visible, not always obvious, but present. And sometimes they wait for moments where you are distracted, where you are unaware, where you choose not to act. Because in those moments they move freely. But on that day you did not remain passive. You responded. And your response created resistance. Not from people, not from the situation itself, but from what was behind it. Michael reveals that your action disrupted a pattern that was attempting to take shape. Something that, if left uninterrupted, could have moved forward in a way that did not serve your alignment. It was subtle. It was quiet. It did not appear dangerous or obvious, but it was real, and your presence broke it. This is why there was immediate recognition in the spiritual realm. Because interruption or misalignment is not common. It requires awareness. It requires response. And it requires a willingness to act when it would be easier to ignore. And you did exactly that. Michael says, what was meant to pass through that moment unchallenged was stopped. That is the part you did not see. Because from your perspective, it may have felt like a simple exchange. A moment that passed and ended. But from the unseen perspective, something was prevented. Something was redirected. Something was cut off before it could fully take form. And that created a reaction. Because what operates in misalignment does not remain silent when it is disrupted. It reacts. Not always visibly. Not always immediately. But it reacts. And this is what Michael wants you to understand. There may have been moments after July 15th where things felt slightly different. Subtle tension. A shift in energy. A sense that something had changed, even if you could not explain it. That is not your imagination. That is the echo of disruption. Because when something is interrupted, it does not disappear quietly, it adjusts. But here is where your position becomes clear. You were not left unprotected. You were not left exposed. Because the moment you aligned, heaven responded. Immediately. And that response included protection. Michael emphasizes this with certainty. He says, what you disrupted will not be allowed to return in the same way. That is not a suggestion. That is a declaration. Because once something is brought into alignment through a genuine act, it cannot simply reset itself without resistance. And that resistance now exists. Around you. Within your path. Within the unfolding of what comes next. This is why you must not dismiss what happened. Because it was not just a moment of kindness. It was a moment of spiritual authority expressed through a simple action. You did not fight. You did not confront. You did not even realize what was happening. But your alignment carried authority. And that authority was enough. Enough to stop something. Enough to break a pattern. Enough to shift direction. And now, the shift is part of your path moving forward. Michael reveals something else now. Something that brings clarity to why this matters for what is ahead. He says that when something is disrupted in this way, it creates space. Space where there was once movement in the wrong direction. Space where something new can now form. Aligned. Clear. Unobstructed. And that space is now part of your life. You may not see it fully yet, but you will begin to notice it. In decisions that feel easier. In situations that unfold differently than expected. In outcomes that no longer carry the same resistance they once might have. This is not random. This is the result of what you broke without even knowing. And now, you stand in a position where that disruption has created opportunity. Not forced it. Not demanded. But available. Because once something is broken, something else can be built. And what comes next will build on what you have already done. Type I stand in authority in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8181 is now activated around your protection. As you recognize how one act of alignment broke what was never meant to stand, understand this. Every seed you release into this mission becomes a force that breaks chains in someone else's life. There are souls right now trapped in confusion, waiting for a message like this to reach them and restore their clarity. The word declares, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." And today, that light is moving through you. I feel this deeply within. I am called to help carry this light further, to ensure it reaches those still in darkness. When you give through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description, you are not supporting a channel. You are igniting a spiritual breakthrough in someone else's life. This is a prophetic act, a moment of obedience that multiplies heaven's work through your hands. As you release your seed, may divine protection, favor, and overflow surround every area of your life. Step into this moment now and release what hath been placed on your heart. There is something you need to understand now, something that most people never realize when they move through moments like the one you experienced on July 15th. When alignment happens, heaven does not remain still. It responds immediately. Archangel Michael steps forward once more, and this time his voice carries a sense of completion, as if he is revealing what was set into motion the very moment your action aligned with divine truth. He does not speak in possibility. He speaks in certainty. He says, the moment you aligned, something was released over you. Not later, not eventually, instantly. Let that settle deeply within you. Because many people believe that blessings are delayed, that they come after time, after effort, after repeated actions. And while there are moments where timing unfolds gradually, there are also moments, like yours, where the response is immediate, not visible, but real. What you did on that day did not just create a ripple outward. It triggered a release inward, a covering, an activation, a shift that attached itself to your path from that moment forward. Michael explains that this was not a reward in the way the world defines it. It was not something given because you earned it. It was something released because you align with something that already existed for you. Because blessings in the spiritual realm are not created in the moment. They are activated in the moment. And your action became the key. There are things prepared for you that remain dormant until alignment occurs. Not because they are being withheld, but because they require the right moment, the right position, the right expression of your spirit to be released. July 15th was one of those moments, and you activated something. Michael reveals that what was released carries three distinct expressions. The first is covering, a form of protection that is not always visible but always present. A subtle shielding that adjusts outcomes, redirects certain paths, and prevents what does not belong from reaching you in the same way it might have before. You may not see it directly, but you will feel it in what does not happen, in the things that seem to pass by without affecting you, and the situations that could have gone differently but didn't. This is part of what was released. The second is clarity. Not all at once, not overwhelming, but gradual. A sharpening of your awareness. A quiet increase in your ability to sense what aligns and what does not. You may begin to notice it in your decisions, in your instincts, in the way you perceive situations that once felt unclear. This is not something external being given to you. It is something within you being strengthened, activated. The third is movement. Because when alignment is recognized and acknowledged, it creates forward motion. Not forced, not rushed, but natural progression. Doors that begin to open. Paths that begin to clear. Situations that begin to unfold with less resistance. You may not connect these changes directly to that moment, but they are connected. Because nothing activated in alignment remains isolated. It integrates into your path. Michael emphasizes that this activation did not require your awareness to begin. It was already released, already in motion, already influencing what is unfolding around you. This is why you may begin to notice shifts that feel subtle but undeniable. Things aligning in ways that are difficult to explain. Timing that feels more precise. Outcomes that feel slightly more favorable than expected. These are not coincidences. They are expressions of what was activated. And here is what you must hold on to. This activation is not temporary. It is not something that fades quickly or disappears without cause. It remains. It continues. It unfolds. But it also responds to your awareness. Because the more you recognize that something has shifted, the more you align with it consciously. The more you move with it, instead of questioning it. The more you trust the direction that begins to open in front of you. Michael says, what has been released will continue to reveal itself. But you must not doubt it when it does. This is important. Because doubt can cause hesitation. Hesitation can slow movement. And movement is already in progress. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to search for what was activated. You only need to remain aware. To notice. To recognize. To trust. Because what was released was not given to confuse you. It was given to support you. To guide you. To position you. And this is only the beginning of what that activation will unfold. Because what comes next will reveal why this shift is preparing you for something ahead, something that will require the very alignment you have already demonstrated. Type I receive the activation in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9191 is now activated over your life. There are moments in life when something changes quietly, and then there are moments when a shift begins that cannot be undone. You are now standing at the edge of one of those shifts. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and this time there is a sense of finality in his presence, as if something has already been set into motion that will not return to what it once was. His voice is steady, unwavering, and filled with certainty. He says, what was activated has already begun to alter your path. You will not remain the same. Let that truth settle deeply within you. Because change does not always arrive with noise or disruption. Sometimes, it begins beneath the surface, quietly restructuring the direction of your life without immediate visibility. And by the time you recognize it, you are already walking in it. This is where you are now. The moment on July 15th was not isolated. It was not simply an event that passed and ended. It was a point of transition. A moment where one version of your path concluded and another began to form. Michael reveals that what has been activated is not just influencing your present. It is shaping what is ahead of you. It is adjusting timing, repositioning opportunities, and aligning circumstances in ways that you may only fully understand later. This is why you may begin to feel something shifting. Not dramatically, not all at once, but subtly. A sense that something is different. A feeling that certain things no longer fit the same way they once did. An awareness that your direction is becoming clearer, even if you cannot fully explain why. This is not confusion. This is transition. Because when alignment creates activation, it leads to movement. And movement leads to change. Michael explains that this shift is not being forced upon you. It is unfolding around you. It is not something you need to chase, and it is not something you need to control. It is something you are stepping into naturally because of what has already been set in motion. This is why your life will not remain the same. Because once something is activated in alignment, It begins to reorganize what surrounds you. It adjusts what you are drawn to. It shifts what holds your attention. It changes how you respond to situations that once felt familiar. And it begins to separate what belongs in your path from what does not. You may begin to notice that certain conversations feel different, that certain environments no longer hold the same connection, that certain patterns you once moved through no longer feel aligned with where you are going. This is not loss. This is refinement. Because a shift does not always add. It also removes. It clears. It redirects. It creates space for what is meant to take its place. Michael says, do not resist what begins to change. What is moving away is not being taken. It is being replaced. This is important for you to understand. Because as this shift unfolds, there may be moments where you question it. Moments where you wonder why something no longer feels the same. Moments where you consider holding on to what is familiar simply because it is comfortable. But comfort is not always alignment. And what you stepped into on July 15th was alignment. That alignment is now guiding the direction of this shift. Not forcefully, but intentionally. You are being moved into a space where your actions, your awareness, and your path begin to reflect the alignment you have already demonstrated. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming more of who you already are. More aware, more aligned, more connected to the movement that is unfolding around you. Michael reveals that this shift will also bring moments of clarity, moments where things begin to make sense in ways they did not before. Connections between past experiences and present understanding. Realizations that come without struggle, without confusion. These moments will not feel forced. They will feel natural, because they are part of the unfolding. And as this continues, you will begin to recognize something important. You are no longer moving through life the same way you were before. Not because everything has changed around you instantly, but because something has changed within you. And when something shifts within you, everything you experience begins to adjust accordingly. This is the shift. This is the movement that was set into motion. This is why your life will not remain the same. Not in a way that disrupts you, but in a way that aligns you more fully with what is meant for you. And this is only the continuation of what began on that day. Because what comes next will reveal what you must do to remain aligned with this shift and how to move forward without losing what has already been activated. Type "I embrace the shift" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1010 is now activated across your path. There comes a point in every spiritual shift where awareness becomes responsibility. Not pressure, not fear, but awareness. And that is where you are now. Archangel Michael steps forward once more, and this time his presence is not only protective, it is directive. There is clarity in his voice, a steady instruction that does not overwhelm, but instead centers you. Because what hath been revealed to you is not meant to confuse you, it is meant to prepare you. He says, what hath been activated must now be maintained. Not by force, but by awareness. Let that settle within you. Because everything you have heard up to this point has brought you to this moment, not just to understand what happened, but to understand how to move forward. What you did on July 15th was natural, unforced, uncalculated, and that is exactly why it aligns so perfectly. But now that you are aware of the impact your alignment carries, your next step is not to try harder. It is to remain conscious. Conscious of your presence. Conscious of your choices. Conscious of the subtle moments that appear ordinary but are not. Michael makes it clear that your life is not about to become complicated. You are not being asked to change everything or to move in constant intensity. That is not how alignment is sustained. Alignment is maintained through awareness, through paying attention, through recognizing when a moment carries weight, even if it looks simple on the surface. Because moments like July 15th will come again. Not in the same form, not in the same situation, but in essence. You will be placed in positions where your response matters, where your awareness determines the outcome, where your willingness to act aligns you with something greater than what is visible. And this time you will recognize it. That is the difference. Michael says, now that you see, you must not return to moving without awareness. This does not mean you must question every action or hesitate before every decision. It means you begin to trust what you sense. You begin to notice what stands out. You begin to respond when something within you signals that a moment matters. Because that signal is not random. It is guidance. It is the same alignment that moved you before, now becoming something you can recognize more clearly. There will be moments where you feel a quiet pull to respond. A sense that something requires your attention. A subtle awareness that you are not just observing. You are meant to engage. You not ignore those moments. You not dismiss them as insignificant. Because they are the continuation of what has already begun. Michael emphasizes that awareness also requires stillness. Not physical stillness, but internal stillness. The ability to remain centered even when things around you are active. The ability to listen inwardly without being overwhelmed by external noise. The ability to recognize what aligns and what does not without needing constant explanation. This is what will keep you aligned. Because as your awareness increases, so will your sensitivity to what surrounds you. You will begin to notice things you did not notice before. Patterns, shifts, subtle changes in direction. This is not something to fear. It is something to trust. Because awareness is not given to overwhelm you. It is given to guide you. Michael also reveals that part of this next step involves release. Letting go of the need to control outcomes. Letting go of the need to fully understand every movement. Letting go of the urge to return to what feels familiar simply because it is known. Because the shift you are in requires movement. And movement requires trust. He says, what has been aligned will continue to unfold. You must not interfere with it by holding on to what no longer belongs. This is where your awareness becomes action. Not force action, but responsive action. Recognizing when something is no longer aligned. Recognizing when something is opening. Recognizing when you are being positioned for something that requires your presence. And moving accordingly. This is how you maintain what had been activated. Not by striving, not by overthinking, but by remaining aware, present, aligned. You are not being asked to become something new. You are being asked to remain true to what has already been revealed through you. That is your next step. And if you hold on to this awareness, what has begun will continue to unfold in ways that do not require effort, only alignment. Because what comes next is not something you create. It is something you step into. Type I stay aware in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1111 is now activated within your awareness. There is a moment where everything becomes clear. Not all at once. Not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a way that settles deeply within your spirit and cannot be undone. This is that moment. Archangel Michael stands before you now, not as a distant voice, not as a messenger passing through, but as a witness to what has already been established. His presence is steady, unshaken, and filled with authority that does not need to prove itself, because what he is about to confirm has already been sealed. He says, what was seen has been acknowledged. What was acknowledged hath been sealed, and what has been sealed now defines your position. Let that truth anchor itself within you, because this is no longer about a single moment on July 15th. This is about what that moment revealed, about who you are when you are not trying to be seen, about how you move when no one is watching, about what your spirit aligns with when given a choice without instruction. And now, that revelation has been confirmed, not by people, not by recognition in the world, but by heaven itself. You must understand what this means, because confirmation in the spiritual realm is not given lightly. It is not offered casually. It is not based on temporary action or fleeting intention. It is based on truth, and the truth revealed through you has now been sealed. Michael makes it clear that this seal is not a label, it is a position that reflects alignment, a position that reflects awareness, a position that reflects your ability to respond when it matters. This is your identity moving forward, not something new, but something now recognized. You are not someone who moves without impact. You are not someone who passes through moments without influence. You are not someone whose actions go unnoticed. You are someone whose presence carries weight even when you are unaware of it. And that is what has been sealed. This is why everything you have experienced since that moment hath been leading to this understanding. Because without awareness, confirmation cannot be fully received. And now you are aware. Michael reveals something that brings everything together. He says, you were not only present in that moment, you were positioned to act, positioned to align, positioned to reveal something that could not have been seen any other way. And now, that positioning continues, not in the same form, but in the same truth. You will continue to find yourself in moments that matter, moments where your presence shifts outcomes, moments where your awareness creates clarity, moments where your response carries weight beyond what is visible. And this time you will know, not fully, not with complete understanding of everything that is happening, but with enough awareness to trust your place within it. This is your identity now, not defined by what you have done, but revealed by how you respond. Michael emphasizes that this seal is not something that can be taken away by doubt, by hesitation, or by moments where you question yourself, because it was not created by effort. It was revealed through alignment, and what is revealed in truth remains. Now, as you stand in this understanding, there is one thing you must carry forward. Trust. Not blind trust, but grounded trust. Trust in your awareness. Trust in your alignment. Trust in the quiet moments where you feel something guiding you to respond, to act, to step forward. Because those moments are not random. They are the continuation of what has already been established. You are not returning to who you were before. You are moving forward as who you have now been revealed to be. And nothing about that is accidental. Nothing about that is temporary. Nothing about that will remain hidden. Because what hath been sealed will continue to unfold. And as it does, you will begin to recognize something that has always been true. You were never just passing through life. You were always part of something greater. Now you see it. Type "I accept my calling" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now sealed over your life. As this message comes to its final seal, understand this truth. What was revealed to you today is not meant to stay with you alone. Just as your single act created a ripple in the unseen, your support can now become the seed that carries this light into the lives of others still searching for clarity. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. And this is not just a promise. It is a living covenant over your obedience. I feel this deeply within. I am called to release a seed that helps this message reach the exact soul God is trying to awaken next. When you give through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description, you are not donating. You are stepping into a prophetic act that multiplies heaven's voice across the earth. This is your moment to move, your moment to align, your moment to participate in something greater than yourself. As you release your seed, may divine favor, overflow, and protection be established over every area of your life. Act now and step into this flow of blessing.